Luckily for Arsenal fans, I've always said that needing 2 own goals and an injury time winner to beat a record-breakingly bad team is actually the sign of champions. This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast, and it's me, Phil Costa, in the hosting chair while Elliot is travelling back to sunny Minnesota after podcasting away from home this week. He did, of course, attend the 3-0 win against Club Brugge with me before finding himself at Emirates Stadium on Saturday for the 2-1 thriller against Wolves, where everything went to plan and absolutely nobody was stressed out. Thank you, as always, for being here. And you see, it's not just those tanned athletic legs in the Arsenal team that get tired. Vocal cords get tired as well. And I'm sure there might be a sore head and maybe some jet lag to nurse. So we're going to go through some rotation today while he gets his bearings and his voice back. Don't worry, though. I've got 2 guests joining me for today's main pod episode, 2 heavyweights who will make you forget all about Elliot. And one of those guests is Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hello there. And I don't appreciate the heavyweight. Even if it is true nowadays.
Look, it was just a title as opposed to an observation, Tim. And obviously, we've also got Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello. People said I lost a little bit of timber on Saturday, but then
look,
again,
I'm seeing the cheekbones, Clive. I'm seeing them.
I think I put on all the weight I have lost on one day in the pub.
the stress eating and the stress drinking to deal with whatever we saw on Saturday night. I mean, obviously, if you haven't listened already, there was an instant reaction from the ground on Saturday night with Elliot, Clive, and Andrew from Arsblog, who tried to dissect what they had just witnessed before getting kicked out of the ground. But now we've had some time to sit on things and hopefully discuss what happened in more detail. Before we get into the game, let's talk the lineup, because there were 5 changes from the team that won against Club Brugge, with William Saliba, Jurriën Timber, Declan Rice, Eberechi Eze and Bukayo Saka all coming back in for this one, the big boys, and I was happy with that. Nothing too unusual, although there was one thing that stood out to me: the absence of Miles Lewis-Skelly. Obviously, with Ricardo Calafiori suspended, he felt like an obvious inclusion at left back, with Timber and Saliba coming back into the team. Ben White probably needed a rest as well, or some load management after basically 3 90s in a week. Unfortunately, we flew a bit too close to the sun with him, and we're probably going to miss him now for the foreseeable future, but we can touch on that on a bit more detail later. I mean, Clive, what were your initial thoughts on the lineup? Was there something you liked, didn't like? Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, when you see Timber and Saliba back in and Rice back in, I saw the lineup and went, yeah, I'm really happy with that. So I tweeted it out before the game, and 500,000 impressions later, with people giving me stick, saying, we should have done this, should have done that. I think, hold on a minute. We weren't sure Saliba when he was going to come back. So I was really pleased to see him back, So that's my initial thoughts. And when the game starts off, you see straight away what the intention was. And we basically went straight to a back 3, with Hincapie on the outside, Saliba in the middle, and Timber to right-sided 3. And Ben White was just set free to go ahead. And so that was obviously the plan, And when we play Lewis-Skelly there, we tend to invert with a left back inside, and we have a double with Zubimendi. We all know the shape of 3-2, but yeah, I was fine with it. Honestly, I was. I wasn't going to get too angry about the start 11. I could see what we were trying to do. There are things I don't like at the moment about our structure, which I'm sure you've all heard me say a few times, and I don't like where we've defaulted to under stress. I really like when we sort of play in pairs and squares, if you know what I mean by that, rather than wide triangles. I don't like to see Rice too high too early. I don't like to see Ben White staying next to centre forward with Timber the other side. These are things I don't like. Doesn't mean I'm right. I just don't like it. And so the lineup itself was absolutely fine by me. But then you read your Twitter and suddenly people are talking about Miles, who I think was maybe a little bit unfortunate. But I thought when he came on, he let people know that I'm still here. Do you know what I mean? And I thought that was a really interesting start to his sort of cameo.
I mean, Tim, I have to be honest, I don't really understand why Lewis-Skelly didn't start here, not even from Lewis-Skelly's perspective, but from a Ben White perspective, because he's barely played this year. I was going to say this season, but I do mean this year. He hasn't been able to put a string of games together. Obviously, there's been reasons for that. He hasn't been super sharp and fit enough to play. Timber's been excellent, but after 3 almost 90s, as I said earlier, it just felt like this was the right time to bring him out. Wolves at home. It's a chance to get Lewis-Skelly back in. can you make sense of why he went for or decided to keep Ben White in the team as opposed to bringing Miles back in?
I mean, not really. I think what Clive says there is right. He was clearly a part of the tactical game plan with how far advanced he was, and he wanted that, and he probably felt that, against a low block, you want a bit more of an overlapper compared to Timber, but obvious. And I think there were elements of his selection that would have been influenced by the fact there's no midweek game. Perhaps if we had a midweek game, he might have gone, well, actually, I'll sit Ben White out for this and I'll bring him back in midweek. But I wonder if they just looked at first midweek off since August. Let's just go for this, and then everyone gets a couple of days off or something. But I can't make a huge amount of sense of it beyond that, to be honest. I think it was clearly a mistake, and I don't even think that's a hindsight thing to say. I also think Hincapié, I think while Gabriel's out, keep him going at left centre back because he's kind of learning it. And I feel like moving him back to left back and then probably at Everton he's going to go back to left centre back. I think when you're filling such an important position like that, I think continuity is important. I think we've seen that with Jakob Kivior before, by the way, when he'll come in, a couple of games might look a bit ropey, but whether it's left centre back or left back, he eventually settles. And I think when you've got quote unquote backup defenders, that's important. And I also think with Saliba coming back into the team, we shifted a bit too much, like Saliba going to left centre back. I think Saliba and Hincapié, fitness permitting, will start at Everton, and that's not really a partnership we've seen much of. So keep it going, get Miles Lewis-Skelly in there. I don't know how much the red card against Wolves last season influenced anything there. I mean, it shouldn't have been a red card, so maybe not. But, and Clive, to your point, when Lewis-Skelly came on, I was looking at him and I was thinking, well, why were we not comfortable having this from the start? I think a left back that goes into midfield, again, against a low block that you're trying to rely on moving around, would have made a lot of sense. And I think in hindsight, overall, I'm not pretending I thought this before the game, it was a bit lumpy as a team. There were some of that's dictated by fitness of attackers, but not enough technicians in there. It was a bit, Martinelli and Gyokeres against a low block, probably not quite technical enough. No Marino, who I think is a very underrated technical player. Understand that Trossard couldn't start. I think there's an element to which we tried to muddle through this game a little bit selection-wise, and it didn't quite come off.
So Wolves, 15 games played going into this one, 13 defeats, 2 draws, 33 goals conceded and only 8 scored. I mean, they're on a 5-point pace for the season, which would leave them 6 short of the current 11-point record set by Derby County in 2007, 2008. So as home fixtures go, I don't think Arsenal could have asked for much more in terms of bouncing back after the late defeat against Aston Villa. And I don't think complacency is something we see very often in this Arsenal team. I don't think it's a word that exists in Mikel Arteta's vocabulary, but there was an air of complacency to this game in the performance, because I think mostly the feeling going into this was, we're going to win 2 or 3-0, easy days and be on our way. No matter how hard you try to avoid that seeping into your bones, into your psyche, we're only human, right? And even for us, it can happen. For the pros, it can happen. And even just dropping your levels 5 or 10% in the Premier League, things can escalate very quickly. Something felt very off.
Can I jump in on that,
nip in.
Phil? Yeah. So I was going to say this at some point in the pod. I don't think, maybe there was complacency. I think what happened mentally, certainly in the crowd, and I'm not blaming the crowd for this, was like a fear of ridicule. Like the crowd got antsy much earlier than I think they would have against pretty much anyone else in the league. There was I was listening to the crowd sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I felt like this as well. And it was like, come on, oh my God. And I was looking up.
This is our game.
It's it's 55 minutes. You know what I mean? Like the crowd got 85th minute energy at 55 minutes. And again, I'm not blaming the crowd for that. That's kind of what the team gave us. But it felt so tense so early. And I think in the crowd, there was that fear of, oh my God, I'm going to go on Twitter and everyone's going to take the piss out of me, which I think is really infecting our fan base a lot. this season. I think there's a lot of fear of ridicule and fear of being perceived. I don't think the players felt like that. I think quickly they got quite tense as well, and I don't think it was the same thing as the crowd. I think for them it was a bit, oh my god, we're expected to, this is like much harder than we probably thought it was going to be. So maybe you can call that complacency, but I think it was a, oh shit, like everyone thinks we should be 3 or 4-0 up by now. And it felt quite desperate, because even everything I've said about not having enough technicians in the starting lineup, we brought them on early. We brought them on 55 minutes and nothing changed. And I do think for the first time, there was a genuine psychological element to this performance for me, which was a bit like, oh shit, if we don't beat Wolves, like, you know, I think we got the fear a little bit in this game, I have to say.
I mean, I was one of the few people on this podcast that weren't in the ground, so you'll be able to give me that insight, and Clive, you the same.
Yeah.
But something fell off very early on, and it's something I've noticed a lot with this group, is that you can always tell how things are going, or how things are going to go within the first 5 minutes. I mean, I don't think we've ever been fast starters under Mikel Arteta, maybe barring that first sort of title challenging season with Zinchenko and Jesus coming into the team. But the way we were moving the ball, the lack of punch and conviction in our movement worried me. And you've complained a lot about the balance of the team recently and how certain players might be redundant or stepping on each other's toes. What do you think went wrong in this one? Was it an issue of profile? Was it an issue of balance? All of the above? Sort of take me into your tactical mind for this.
Don't know about that. Let's start with the pub first, right? Before the game, and everybody I spoke to was talking 5-0. I even heard 8, and maybe because Elliot was there, you might get your 10-0. You know, and the Monday night versus
just blame
Manchester,
him. It's fine.
The Monday night versus Manchester United informed many of us this is the worst team in the Premier League, and it's set expectation. The game starts, right? The ball starts rolling. Slower than I can run.
It informed Wolves too, by the way, Clive.
Yes,
I thought they were much better. They got humiliated on Monday.
I think that's a key point. We need to give Wolves some credit as well, because they came here, they sat in their 5-3-2. They were very aware defensively, resilient, hardworking. They were tracking runners. So obviously they have a role to play in this game as well. But I'm obviously looking at the Arsenal side, because we should have enough to beat them either way.
Yeah, not just a 5-3-2, but quite a narrow 5-3-2. And they're giving us the outsides, hence why Ben White probably started this game, because he knew what was coming up against Arteta, and that makes a lot of sense. And they were not going to get embarrassed on live TV on a Saturday night. They were going to go and see what happens and see how tense we become. So I do think there's a level of complacency. Last time I felt that confidence for a game was probably the Bournemouth 3-2. Everyone thought we'd win that one. Within a few seconds, we were down. And suddenly the tension come in. Tim's absolutely right about the really cool side of things. It's perfectly put. And I think that you can extrapolate that for the season. We've been set up to be the champions. And suddenly, every time we drop a point, it's like, oh my God, we're going to get told we're bottlers again. Do you see what I mean? And so that sort of emotion is everywhere, really. So what I will say about the start of the game, Phil, is that we have an expectation of the ball moving and going around, and we're going around the outside, and we're having lots of off-the-ball runs and slip-through passes. Mate, what's the first 50 minutes of that game again? Free kick after free kick, foul, injury, stop-start, restart, long throw. Rubbish, mate. No flow there. It's no one's fault. It's just the game. Players staying down, not quite getting the trainer on, but staying down long enough to slow the game. Everyone does it, so I'm not blaming Wolves. To slow the game, to try to make the first 20 minutes really messy. And they got it, didn't they? They got a messy first 20 minutes. I can't remember a shot. I can't remember much. A couple of crosses that were headed out. Timber had a header that he took from Gyokeres again. Again, he flashed in front of him. And I'm thinking, this is just a steady, normal Premier League game. But of course, the tension did hit a little bit quicker, really. So from our side of things, I just think we've become a little bit passy to the man, pass to the next man, pass to the next man. Everyone's pointing where the ball should go. And it's almost like 30 passes and a goal. When not enough people running off the ball, apart from one man who we all know, we'll probably get to later on, who wants to dart in and dart around and move. And suddenly we're just looking a little bit, I don't want to say it, version 1, as Elliot said, version 1.0 was from last year. And it's just where we are emotionally at the moment. And we just got to take it and and get away from it. But I'll say to you, every single game this year I've been to at home have been really interesting and quite joyous. And I didn't have the joy, if that sounds, and I know it's not good analysis, but I didn't have the joy. I just had the fear of what we could lose. And if I felt that, I'm not the only one who felt that. And I'm sure it's on the pitch as well, right? So this one's out of the way. And in some ways, it should have been the best game for us to have, but it's probably the worst before a break. Last day at work before you go on your summer holidays. You're never that good, are you? Do you know what I mean? And
sitting in the corner flag, yeah.
And we weren't that good, and now they've got a chance to decompress for 3 days, and then come back at the weekend. And we need it. All of us do.
I mean, you mentioned it there. It was a very slow, non-eventful half. Wolves were looking to stop the flow of the game at every opportunity. Arsenal a bit limited to the crossing from wide areas, although Ben White on the overlap was a key part of this game. He pulled up. I mean, it was that in that passage of play when he was chasing Hwang. I mean, how he somehow found himself through on goal in that moment with nobody around him amazed me. I was almost waiting for the camera to pan back to see somebody there, and there was nobody there. And I thought, oh God. So I think Zubimendi might have lost it on the edge of the box, and all of a sudden we're sprinting back. It gave me Gabriel vibes, chasing Adama Traore a little bit, and you could see very clearly his hand goes straight to the hamstring, and that's 3 to 4 weeks out, unless we got some very good news coming in the post. Again, Arteta said post-match that we were buying tickets for another injury because we didn't have anybody else. I have to say, I'm not sure that's true. In this particular case, I thought we could have chosen Lewis-Skelly. He was available. We know how physically demanding it is to play at fullback, especially if the idea was for Ben White to be on the overlap, getting in behind, supporting Saka. It's just frustrating to me because we found him again. And he's found a good level. He's playing well. We're seeing more of the old Ben White that's comfortable inverting. There's a Ben White that's comfortable sitting in a 3 as well. He would have been so useful to have across this busy Christmas schedule. And now he's gone for a month. So naturally, that pushed our back four into something a bit more familiar, as you mentioned, with Timber at right back and Capier coming in at centre back. It didn't really do much to change the way that we were playing, though. There were a couple of nice runs from Lewis-Skelly going through the middle. There was a header for Martinelli at the back post that he should have done better with, in my opinion. There was a moment for Gyokeres to attack the 6-yard box, but he was caught on his heels a little bit when Saka just put in a dream of a ball. And it's not the first time that's happened, unfortunately, with Gyokeres just being a little bit slow to the mark. Again, when it's a half like this, we're always putting the microscope on 1 or 2 moments because they feel important, right? But just, Tim, I will ask you again about that moment with Gyokeres. In my mind, he's too slow there. He's not anticipating the ball in. He's not creating separation from the defender. Is that how you saw it in the ground?
Yeah. Sometimes, doing these podcasts and stuff, like, we're fan media, right? So we want to tap into like the emotion, but we also kind of owe it to the audience to be sensible and try and do sensible analysis. So if I tell you what I was saying about Gyokeres, I won't tell you what I was saying about Gyokeres in my WhatsApps and the post-match point.
Release the files.
It's probably it's ungenerous and not for public consumption. It's pub chat. Yeah, because I'm trying to. I sent out a tweet at halftime, which was basically as close as I get to nowadays doing that kind of pub chat thing where I say, like, everyone says, like, with a team like Arsenal, oh, they just need someone to put the ball in the net. They just need a striker to do that. And it completely undervalues and underrates the striker's role in the actual build-up. I think there's 2 things that really come out in this game about the personality of this Arsenal team. The personality of our team is still our structural solidity. I don't want to say defensive so much, but structural solidity. When we went on that run before the November international break, where we won, I think, 7 and then just drew the Sunderland game, when all the attackers were injured, what did we do? We went 2-0 lockdown. I think that's what Arsenal probably in their bones like doing the most. Get 2-0 up, maybe one of the goals comes from a set piece, shut the game down, make the last 20 minutes very, very kind of boring. And we've lost that personality, because we lost kind of both the centre backs and we've had to do a lot of change back there. So we looked more basically this block has flipped on its head. Last block, loads of attacking injuries, lean back on the out of possession stuff. We look much better. This block, it's gone the other way around. We've lost the defensive personality of the team, and now we've got all these new toys to play with and attack. And actually, it's you can tell it's a bit bumpy at the moment, and there's a lot of change as well. So there's I think Elliot kind of pointed out how many different attacking lineups we've had. So that's the kind of slightly generous explanation. If I think of the maybe 2 games where Gyokeres has played really well, Burnley away, Newcastle away. Well, what are Burnley and Newcastle away defined by? Centre-backs who want contact, who want to smash your ankles, who want to elbow you in the small of the back and you back into them. Those are the 2 games Gyokeres has played really well. Against low blocks where the centre-backs are like, we're staying here. We're staying in our penalty area. We're not engaging. We're not coming over to you. He looks a lot less effective. He still looks very heavy and lumpy to me. That was my initial impression, but I kind of thought, well, he hasn't had a pre-season and, you know, he's obviously quite a heavy-set guy. It did remind me of, I think Troy Deeney used to say that he'd deliberately be very bulky at the beginning of the season because he knew that his physique would taper down a bit, and once it came to challenging for the playoffs and stuff or fighting relegation, he knew that March, April he'd be in really, really good shape. And I did wonder if there was a bit of that with Gyokeres, but he still looks very heavy, very lumpy, and I'm afraid we're past the point of they don't create for him, because when Marino plays up front, when Jesus plays up front, when Havertz plays up front, they get shots. That's not a problem for them. The quote-unquote problem there is none of them are mega clinical. But the other thing about the personality of this Arsenal team, I think, is from an attacking standpoint, it's at its best when it's an orchestra. You know, it's not one person you're trying to create for or one person driving things forward. This game is Saka. Everyone else, sorry, you're getting, if I'm L'Equipe, you're getting 1 out of 10. The rest of you, this game is Saka wins us this game, and it's criminal that he's not getting anything in the assists column for this game. And I don't think Arsenal are at their best like that. Arsenal are at their best when it's, you know, it's like it's like an organism, you know, it's like more of a choir. I don't think we're an attacking unit who will, let's just create chances for this one guy. And yes, at the moment, I think Gyokeres, there is some truth. We're adapting to him. He's adapting to us. But I'm sorry, mate. You've got to be on the end of those to justify your place in the team, because you don't do enough else. But I do also think with strikers like that, you kind of have to score 40 or 50 to justify it. I do think that's just the way it is. If you're Haaland, if you're Lewandowski, yeah, you can do absolute non-entity in the build-up if you're scoring that many goals. And I just don't think he's ever going to do that. And I think the number of circumstances I can think of where he's really useful seem to be diminishing a little bit.
I mean, look, you were unhappy with my heavyweight description earlier, but you've just compared Gyokeres to Troy Deeney, so I think that's 1-1 in my book. I mean, Clive, I was going to touch on him more individually later, but just give me some thoughts on Gyokeres. I mean, it's been a difficult few months for him. Like Tim said, he came in cold with no preseason. He's been injured. We're having to learn how to play with him. He's learning how to play with us. But you often speak about that night in Lisbon where you saw him up close. He certainly gave Gabriel and Saliba things to worry about, but he looks a shadow of that player at the moment, and we need to find ways to get him more involved. I mean, in 81 minutes, 15 touches, 3 out of 6 passes completed, 1 shot, and 8 possessions lost. I know he was a little bit better in that second half, and there was one moment where he pinned Agbadou and spun him. But if we're squinting and looking for moments like that, it doesn't look good already. How do we get more out of this player without it affecting the rest of the team?
We have to make a decision how we want to play. And in the games where he's played well, we've got to him early. So this team, which is based on our collective abilities, with basically 11 midfielders on the pitch, they're not used to saying, giving away what they want to do and giving it to one guy that may not win all his races, that may not keep it, that may not get his shots off in time. They're not prepared to divulge everything and give it to that person. That's not in our mindset. So everybody wanted a centre forward, a true centre forward, a true 9. But actually, are we psychologically set up for a true 9? Do we think the first thing in our body is to get it forward and give it to that guy? Right? So in the teams he played with before, he was that guy. If he raised his eyebrow, the ball was coming to him. That's not how we play. That's not saying to me that we all agree he's not at his best at the moment, right? So let's go a bit deeper into this, right? We don't play like that. We don't give it to one guy. If there's one guy we're going to give it to, it's number 7, right? So we don't give it to our centre forward early. We're not defined by that. We never have been. And we tried it at the start of the year, and people were helping it round the corners and things like that really, really quickly. And away from home, I think he's got a useful value. I do. I think one of our friends sort of said online, this started at the Villa selection. The Villa selection was wrong for that game. If we'd have had Gyokeres and a couple of sprinters for the Villa game, it'd been much better. This was a technical close to box game. This was not the right game for him. This is more of a Marino game where Marino played at Villa was hooked at half time. Does that mean? So the balance issues started from then, and they've flipped on game after game, with the selections not being right for the game that actually transpired. The good thing this year is that we can make substitutions when we get it slightly wrong, and because we've got good players on the bench and not a bunch of kids. And so for me, the question is, are we prepared to say, this is how we play, and we're just going to give it to the number 9? I don't think we are. And I don't think the players wholly trust all aspects of his game. And I don't think he's getting the ball. I'm not saying he's doing well with the ball, but I don't think we're set up for that psychologically. And so for me, if you want to play him, you've got to do things very, very quickly and directly and instantly to get the best out of him. And in this low block game with 3 absolute monsters standing in the centre part of that pitch, there was no instant passes for him. It was the wrong selection for this day. It really was. This was a day for midfielders, combinations round the corners. Probably a Mikel Merino day, to be honest, but he's played a lot of football, right? So, and where we don't even bother with centre forward, he rolls out and runners go past him and we go from there, So that's the ideal combination for this game. So Gyokeres, I did see him in Lisbon, and obviously, Tim, you was at Newcastle, weren't you, mate, in that game? He was high up there. I don't know if you saw him or just saw the top of his head. But you didn't look at him and think he's rubbish on that day. Do you see what I mean? He was far from it. He was really robust, and he got around people. Again, the game was longer. We were more direct. We went down the sides. Really good performance. Well, you know what I do? When I despair, I go back and watch these games again. So I watched the Newcastle game again to see what I saw, and he was really quite good in that game. So once you see something, you know it's there. So why isn't it not coming out? Partly, I don't think we're ready to divulge ourselves to that centre forward. But secondly, I think he might be struggling a little bit with the weight of responsibility and the weight of I'm being judged by goals and I'm not scoring. I'm not getting the ball. I'm not getting the touches. And you can feel it weighing on him. You can just feel it weighing on him. But can he accept that responsibility? Can he accept it? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if the players are quite there with him neither. And it's not to make excuses for him. It's just me trying to go deeper and find out why. Because I've seen it. I've seen him do well. He's done well. I remember the Leeds game. We beat them. He's knocked it into Madueke, run around the outside and smashed the side of the post. Where's that player gone? When he stepped up he scored in that game. When he stepped up for the penalty, there was not a single person in that crowd didn't think he was going to score. When he scored against Bilbao at the home game, flashed across the guy and headed it in. Everyone goes, "Wow, what have we got here?" Don't forget what you've seen. Ask yourself, why is it not coming out? And since that Burnley game, what's disappointed me is we all thought he's turned the corner, but it was the wrong corner. He's actually gone back to exactly where he was. We were helping him through the no pre-season bit of the season, and he's gone back to that. So that's my concern. So yeah, I just think he's struggling a little bit. He's struggling a little bit, but I do think this game didn't suit him, and I think there are others that maybe did. But I think he needs to reset as well. Let's see where we are. But When I start seeing Kai Havertz compilations go around my Twitter feed, and I've got slagged for supporting him for so long, when you start to see him getting thrown around, you're thinking, okay, people are coming to a conclusion, aren't they? The guy who doesn't play, he's suddenly the best forward in the world, right? So come on, Kai, hurry up and get back.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I like the idea of signing Gyokeres this summer because in a pretty awful striker market, he was this single-minded, ruthless, relentless force who was coming off 2 amazing seasons in Portugal, someone who had shown a capacity to fight and improve with each season. And more importantly, he offered qualities this Arsenal team was lacking in terms of his running in behind, the aggression of those runs, taking shots, being on the end of things. But there was just always this little voice in the back of my head that said, can he step up? Will he be able to step up? And nobody could argue with his output. I think he scored 102 goals in 97 games for Sporting. So that's not the question for me. I think part of the question came from who those goals were coming against, and there was just a nervousness about the level of the Portuguese league. I mean, 37 of his 39 goals last season were against teams in 5th place or lower. Only 2 goals came against those above that, and they both came against Braga, so no goals against Porto or Sporting. I just look at him at the moment and I think whether it's a mobility issue, a footballing IQ issue,
he looks tense.
A confidence issue, a mentality thing, he needs to thrive on those moments where it's about him against the defenders. But he's barely creating any separation. And that means in close quarters or in the bigger spaces. And I'm just starting to worry a little bit that he's being exposed by the level. But I'm not ready to write him off after 4 months. I think that would be ridiculous. But maybe there's a question that we need to revisit in a few months just to see where we are, because I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried a little bit. But yeah, let's get on to the second half anyway.
This is the closest he's going to get to playing a crap Portuguese team, by the way.
Absolutely, yeah. This was Rio Ave, and he couldn't score against them. So, to be honest, heading into the second half, I was shocked that nobody was hooked at halftime, because we clearly needed something different on the pitch, a different set of qualities, more lock pickers than runners, maybe. But it didn't really matter because they got 10 minutes and nothing in those 10 minutes would have persuaded the manager to keep things going as they were. So it was Ødegaard, Merino and Trossard coming on for Zubamendi, Eze and Martinelli. Who actually nearly scored just before he came off. He did really well to spin Matt Doherty, maybe, on the outside and run through on goal. I mean, that was one of the only times we saw it in the game. But Tim, I'll ask you again, what did you think the motivation was behind those changes? And with those guys on the pitch, how was Arteta planning to change the game?
Yeah, I mean, clearly that tells you the starting lineup's wrong, right? And I think if it's not for the Ben White injury, that is a half time. At least one of those guys is on at half time. I think probably having used one sub already was a bit like, okay, I'll give it 10 minutes. But I often say this on the podcast, like, you can tell when Arteta makes an angry substitution. I can see him. He's directly in front of me. I see those arms waving out the corner of my eye, and it's just like, right, all of you, get on, come on, get on. And I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way. I think clearly he was trying to inject a little bit more technical quality into the game, a little bit more movement. Merino, Trossard, they're very much in that kind of, tricky players. They find spaces, they find pockets, and all of that. I did think, I kind of feel a little bit for Zubamendi, because he tends to get hooked in this scenario just because Declan Rice can sit deeper, and Declan Rice just has such an extraordinary all-round game, and his set-piece delivery is very important. So, like, Zubamendi almost comes off by default because you can't take Rice off and he can sit.
He wasn't happy about it either. No.
And also, look, Zubamendi's played a lot. He starts every game, doesn't he?
The most minutes, Tim. He's had the most minutes this year.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's no big drama there. But I did wonder if, like, having that control a little bit deeper might have actually been useful. I think against low blocks, Zubamendi's very, very important. I talked about this a bit when we played West Ham and we played Ødegaard and Eze. And that was the one game Zubamendi didn't start. And I know it was only 20 minutes, but we created bugger all. And then Zubamendi came on, and all of a sudden the ball starts going into the box. It's that same thing I was talking about earlier. Like, your centre forward's movement creates chances. right? So you can't just say, oh, if this guy just stands on the penalty spot, he'll tap in a load of goals. And so, you know, there was maybe something to that. I mean, I thought it was absolutely right. I thought that fixed the balance of the team for sure. I'm pretty certain that in the ordinary run of things, Arteta would have liked to have started at least one of those players, probably Trossard. I was slightly surprised not to see Madueke, actually. And I do think, again, that might have been helpful for Gyokeres to have more of a winger, perhaps going on the outside, getting to that touchline, getting balls into the area to attack. And having that crossing from both sides, because Saka's crossing is always on point, but maybe as well from a left footer on the left, you get that going on the outside and you get that low cross in as well. And from there, like, own goals can happen as well, like particularly when you're playing a team that's got 10 players in their penalty area, you keep whipping it across the area low, and that's not Martinelli's game. So I guess I was slightly surprised not to see Madueke, but at the same time, I think maybe he should have started over Martinelli, particularly because of the game Madueke had on Wednesday night against Bruges. And so I don't know, maybe again, they're just looking after his fitness, but it just didn't feel like the balance was right. That triple substitution on paper corrects the balance. But like I say, I think by that point, we had a bit of a case of the scaries, and it was like, oh my God, this is the consequences of not winning. Like, any other team in the league, I think would have probably still been quite calm at that stage. So it helped a bit, but it didn't massively help. I don't think it significantly changed the performance.
Yeah, it was a very low bar the first half, and I think to have maintained that level would have been super worrying. So any kind of improvement, any way we could have injected something else into the game helped us. And I think it did. You know, we were generating some shots from the edge of the area. There was pressure and crosses and corners and free kicks. So naturally there was a swing in momentum, even if it wasn't us peppering the goal or their goalkeeper. I mean, I think it was the 66th minute. The Rice shot from the edge of the box, that was our first shot on target in the game. So against Wolves at home, you can imagine what the game is like at that point. Although I did like Trossard's cameo coming off the left. You know, he was very cute and smart with some of those passes between the lines. Some touches helped free Lewis-Skelly in behind. He was finding Rice centrally. But then the goal does arrive, and it comes from Bukayo Saka. For me, Clive, he was the standout performer of the day. And it's, you know, we have to wrestle with this idea a lot, because it's quite simple. We don't win this game without him. He was levels above any other player on the pitch. Maybe Rice in the second half, I think, had a good performance as well. But Arsenal will always have a right-sided bias because he's really fucking good. That's how I see it with Saka. Like, there's no way we can truly balance this team. It's because we always look for him. As you said, we always look for number 7. He had more touches in the opposition box, created more chances and completed more take-ons than any other Arsenal player in this game, and won all 10 of his duels in the game. So he wasn't just on it from a technical and creative standpoint, he was on it physically as well. He was playing against a back 5 that sometimes turned into a back 6 on occasion, so you're having to beat 2 players at once all the time. That's quite special, and I agree with Tim. It's a shame that he's not coming out of this game with a couple of assists, because he was the guy that was really making things happen. Did you see his performance or stature growing in that second half, Clive? And where did things really shift for you?
Don't worry too much about him. He's probably going to come out of this game with a contract, right? So, as the highest paid player in the club, yeah. And which he absolutely deserves. I think what stood out on the weekend, when we were all a little bit tense and a bit nervous, that he doesn't get that way. He doesn't default into bad behaviour. So you could see, you know, let's just go through it, right? Martinelli, schoolboy miss on the far post, 1 yard, 2 yards out. That's crap. Got to head it in, right? Gyokeres, I've called him a relentless runner. Did you see any relentless running in the forward areas in this game? I didn't see much relentless running. You know, I can think, but we're not going to him, but you got to keep making the movements, and the players will eventually think, you mean business, I'll come and find you. You know, your body language tells you things. Eze, really, really quiet in this game. Didn't get on the ball enough, maybe a bit too right-sided, when he's much better for me supporting a centre-forward, essentially, or tucked in off the left. Again, the balance on our side wasn't right on the left-hand side to allow him to tuck in. The team selection was wrong. We all know this now. Wrong selection for this day. And so as a group of forwards, we have one guy that does it all of the time. By the way, he doesn't take easy work. When other people are sticking it in top corner and we're free falling up, he doesn't think, well, I'm going to stretch myself out to join the party. He said he knows when to step up, when it's hot, when it's like this, when everyone else is down. He says, no, I'll take care of this now. Give me the ball. And he turns into something like a true player. And I think it's a worry for me where people go under stress. This is the first time I've seen it, and I don't like it. I'll be honest with you. I didn't like what I've seen. I've seen nothing but courage, relentless ability to press the ball off the ball, to get up the pitch. I don't see people scared to playing without courage. I'm scared to go and press the game. It really disappointed me where Saka was just so available to do the hard work, to take a foul, protect the ball properly, to deliver his corners on point, to deliver his crosses between the sticks, not over the top for the ball boys to pick up. He drops it properly in the areas. He just does things correctly, and doing things correctly under pressure is the key thing that separates players from normal players to elite players. And he keeps doing it. But Phil, I'll be honest with you, it's great. And we've done millions of podcasts together where we've praised Bukayo Saka. But we're Arsenal people. And this is not going to last, this one-man attack thing. It's not going to last. We've all been here before. Every time he touches that hamstring, we're going to be petrified. This is not going to last unless other people take their load. And we need to happen quickly, because the defenders did it in the first phase of the season, as Tim alluded to earlier on, to restrict people to not having a shot on target. And now we need our forwards to lift our defenders so they're not twanging their hamstring. So we need them to do the business. And we're not caring the same way about finishing chances, stroke half chances, the way we care about stopping shots going on our goal. It's not equitable. We need to care a lot more with that last little sprint, that last little run to get on the back post, to head it properly. This stuff needs to be upped, because right now, if we want to win this league, there's another team that's quite free scoring. And I don't sense the same tension with them around the goal. And we need to change this in our heads. We can't just rely on number 7. That's probably why I've got the ump. I've had it for a while because I've watched it. And it won't work. Eventually, like Bayern Munich will do, they'll put 2 left-backs against him and don't bother with the other side and say, you beat us from the left side. You beat us from the centre forward. At the highest level, can we do that? And that's the question I'm asking. Forget Wolves, right? We beat them, right? Done. On the bus. Christmas party this week. Enjoy yourselves. This is the question we have to answer. Can we, if Bukayo Saka doesn't do it, who else is going to do it? Continuously and consistently. Right? So that question is still to be answered, in my opinion.
I mean, I think we saw a little window into what that world could look like midweek. Obviously, Madueke, with a really impressive performance, scored the worldie from 25 yards, got in at the back post to score again. But for me, it's not about the quality. It's about the consistency of people being able to deliver. So Martinelli could score twice in 1 week and then he won't score for another month. Madueke, the same. Can he do that week on week, which is for me the issue. I think Saka can always deliver. Or most of the time he can score the goal that gets us ahead, or he can score a goal that puts us in with a chance to win the game late on. But I just don't get that feeling yet from any of the other attackers. I mean, there was an option to maybe bring Ethan on in this game, Madueke, but I thought that the changes were pretty obvious and signposted when we made them. We go ahead. The goal's slightly fortunate, but again, it's down to the delivery. It's a really horrible one for Johnston. He sort of taps it onto the post. We get a bit lucky with the Martinez ricochet, but that's fine. I'm not complaining. And then I think you did see Arsenal lose some weight from their shoulders. There was a freedom in the centre of the pitch. Trossard had that chance where he went through but couldn't quite sort his feet out. There was Ødegaard running through, hit the side netting with his right foot. So there was a bit of intensity and intention to get that second. However, those last 10 minutes were a mess, an absolute disaster, and you could see the equaliser coming from miles away. Whether it was fatigue, nervousness, whether Wolves just threw caution to the wind, whether it was a tactical issue, maybe a combination of all of the above, we were dropping deeper and deeper. We were struggling to clear our lines. The amount of challenges and second balls that we didn't win in that little passage of play, it was inevitable. And there was a good article this morning on The Athletic where I think Stuart James broke down that little passage of play that led to the goal. And he said we had 84% possession in the second half and registered 8 attempts on goal in that period to Wolves' 0. Even if we weren't convinced by the performance level, that's still pretty dominant and an improvement on what we saw in the first half. Between the 83rd and the 90th minute, Arsenal's longest passing sequence was 3. Wolves went from barely touching the ball to dominating possession. They had more than 80 passes in that period. So, Tim, if you're looking at this from the touchline, let's say you're Mikel Arteta in this moment, the team's dropping further and further back. We're not winning the second balls. We're ducking out of challenges. What happened in those final stages and why did it happen?
Yeah, this is why I think it's a psychological thing. You could say, maybe like if Gabriel's there, he wins a big header, he screams for everyone to, politely screams at everyone to move the defensive line up and get up the pitch. Maybe if Zubimendi's there, we get our foot on the ball, we pass our way out of trouble a little bit easier. Maybe, but I think we just got the jitters. I really think it's kind of as simple as that it was like, oh God, we've got to protect this. And to be fair, we do that a lot, but we do it with Saliba and Gabriel, and we do it much further up the pitch. The West Ham game in October, 2-0, we shut it down, nothing happened. Burnley away, 2-0, we shut it down, nothing happened. We defend high and we keep our shape that way. And I think we were trying to do the same thing, but 30 yards further back, which is why we couldn't clear the ball. And it's funny what you said about the passing sequences, because I don't, in my dotage, I don't, and because we're a good team, I don't have cause to, I don't shout many disparaging things at the team anymore. But, in a moment of stress, even when we took centre after their goal, we couldn't keep it. And literally in the build up to the goal, I think I just shouted like, try 2 effing passes. Let's see if we can get to 2, shall we? And then we got to 3 and we scored. And it really was that simple. Like, we couldn't keep the ball. And I haven't seen that in so long. It reminded me of like one of Arteta's more famous quotes was after that Watford game in 2022, where we went 2 goals up twice and we let Watford back in. And that's when he had that famous quote about, I want 300,000 passes in their half of the pitch. And he bought Zinchenko. And, I think something happens in every season that really shapes Arteta's thinking about the future of the team. And that Watford game, I think, was crucial in terms of what comes next with like Zinchenko and Jesus and keeping the ball far up the pitch, even if you're not like going hell for leather attacking, but keeping the line really, really high. And like, never mind 300,000 passes, as you said, we couldn't do 3. And I haven't seen that in so long that I just have to think it's psychological. I can't look at the players that were on that pitch and go, oh yeah, it's because he's on or whatever. Even like someone who, we all go to our hobby horses in these moments. Anything that's nagging at the back of our minds, that's where we go when we play badly. So for me, that was Gyokeres. I don't mind saying that, but he's not on the pitch when that's happening. It's not his fault. He's gone off at this point. So I can't pick on him and plant it on him. Like, these are players who have put like unbelievable level of consistency and results together over the last 2 to 3 years. So when they do that, and I don't recognise it, I just have to think it's psychological. They got edgy and they were thinking, again, I think nearly any other team in the league that wouldn't have happened. I just think there was a psychological weight around, oh my God, this is the bottom team. If we don't do this, this is going to be huge. I think it was, I hope it was anyway, quite unique in that respect.
I think you're right to highlight a psychological issue there, but I also think in terms of our defensive basics and our technique, the pressing was wrong. I think where we were standing in our structure and our block was wrong. And I'm always pointed to an Arteta quote. And he said after the game, in relation to this sort of passage of play. He said, "We generated more chances, scored a goal, but after we had a period of 2 or 3 minutes in deep, totally passive with horrible defensive habits, that is nowhere near the level that is required against a team that hasn't had a single shot." And then he followed it up with, "There's a moment that you cannot press them, that's fine, but the level of activity in the block has to be very different to the one that we had. Every time you win in the Premier League, you should be happy and conscious of the difficulty of doing so, but we made it even harder for ourselves today, and that's the big lesson." Clive, based on what I've just said there and what Tim said as well, what do you think went wrong in those final stages? Was it a structural issue, a mental issue, all of the above? I mean, that was very un-Arsenal on a day that continued to feel very un-Arsenal.
Yeah, so I rewatched the first half hour and the last 15 minutes this morning, and I looked at the front line when we should have been pressing. And we got, in that front four, we got Saka, Jesus, Trossard, and Odegaard. Odegaard and Jesus normally lead the sort of, in our normal Arsenal, normally lead it. They both were just standing there. Right, so, and what Declan Rice tend to do when we're under a bit of pressure, he tends to go into the back four. So suddenly, the ability to, one of my great lines, to regain, retain. When you win the first ball, you got to have depth, you got to have lines, so you can win the second ball. If you've only got 2 lines, you're not going to win that second ball. You know, and that's what happened in this case. They just kept getting wave after wave because we won it, couldn't keep it. Regain, retain, get to 3 passes. That's exactly, it's just a coaching thing. I've always, this is what you do. When you win it, get to 3, so you can get into your shape to attack. If you win it and lose it in 1 or 2, you know what you're doing? You're creating waves, you're creating fatigue issues. We do it all the time to teams. We nick it and we go same side on the right-hand side when people are fatigued, and we get space for the cross and we score. This is happening to us. This is happening against Wolves. Who was going to say, this is the development opportunity, right? To know Gabriel, who's going to say, get out of our box? Which one of our defenders is going to take that lead? So that's a Saliba development opportunity, or Hincapi, who's developing really quickly into a leader in the back line, has been a really good addition to our football club. Honestly, he's looking really, really good. He has his moments, but he's looking really, really good, and he's prepared to take physical responsibility and go and get people. And I think we are way too passive in this game. So, and the front four, we're all experienced pros. All experienced pros. Who's going to decide to go and push on and go and press them? This is on us. This isn't about someone. Madueke was a little bit defensively interesting, shall we say, at Villa. I'll give him a break, right? Because he's new to the group, he's new to the structure. There's nobody new in that front group. You've got a 29-year-old Jesus, or 28, a 30-year-old Trossard. Odegaard's been here from the moment, and you know, and we've got Bukayo and Saka, and everyone's standing there. It's like, this is on us. This is on what we do. Those people know the principles. And I thought the manager was really good when he said, I need to remind people in training, I'm paraphrasing here, Phil, we haven't trained, so some of our habits are coming back in. I thought, yeah, I need to reset you guys to remind you of what we do really, really well. We are a really good out possession team, and we haven't been for a few weeks. You know, and we've lost our focus on those dirty details and make everyone think this is the best team in Europe. It's only 2-3 weeks ago I watched the highest level technical game I've ever seen in my life, Bayern Munich, and we were more than comfortable on that pitch, and we belong to that level, to a point where I may have uttered the words, we are a top 3 team in Europe. None of us felt like a top 3 team in Europe at about minute 91 at the weekend, right? So that's how quickly things can change. So we need to get back to those details, retain the ball, hold your structure, hold your lines, don't cower away, you know, and then we can up the step ladder. You pass it 1 step, up another step, then we're out. If you cower away into a back 6 and then a front 4, you got no chance of keeping it. No chance of keeping it. And I thought we were that doesn't look good. That probably encourages every team in the league where we were just discouraging people to even play us. You know, Brentford didn't bother, right? And but now we've encouraged people, you know, by being that tentative and that nervous. People are thinking, everyone's thinking, there's Arsenal, there's the team I recognise. The next time we play, we may not even be first in the league. Do you know what I mean? And because of the way the games are scheduled. And so we do have to have this moment to reset our thoughts and go back to the basics and hopefully find a couple of hot forwards to dig us out of jail. Someone do what Madueke did in Europe. We need that a little bit more from this team.
I mean, I thought we'd blown it. There were times where Rice had his arms out, screaming at everybody. Marino was lost in the press. He didn't know where to stand. I think Nkapie got sucked into that deep defensive line for the goal, and he just got bodied by that giant Arokodare up front, who sort of used his body weight to push him into that deeper zone. Flicked header. I thought we'd blown it, really. And in that moment, I know this is not the fan thing to say, but I didn't know where the goal was coming from. The winning goal for me was miles away. I didn't see enough in our performance on the day. I didn't see enough in our forwards to be able to claw something back. Obviously, we did. The ball finds its way to Saka. Another brilliant ball in. I mean, the consistency of those deliveries from that side is just absurd. He's managing to get them on the money all the time, whether they're deep, whether they're central. That corner of the box is such a dangerous area for him, but he managed to get one in. I thought Jesus had sort of flicked it into the corner. It was the Welbeck moment. It was the moment that Elliot had been talking about those title-winning teams who have one day, one occasion to pin a title run on. Thankfully, it went in either way, but it didn't come off Jesus. It came off Mosquera, who, we have our own history with after he sort of choke slammed Kai Havertz to the ground and put his finger somewhere where it shouldn't be on Gabriel Jesus's body last time we played Wolves at home. But yeah, just you could see when Jesus was wheeling away, you could see him mouth own goal, because everyone came to celebrate with him and he knew. But I don't care. We somehow found a way. Saka's dragging us through, and you could almost feel the relief in the stadium, like one big exhale from everybody. I mean, you two were there. You know what it must have felt like in that moment. A huge moment and a huge goal for Arsenal, because if that game ends in a draw, the Sharks are smelling blood. I mean, people are circling around us, waiting for a moment of weakness to come and chomp our legs off. But thankfully, we managed to keep them at bay for at least another week. But, this is just another reminder. Teams are there. They're ready for us. They're breathing down our necks now. The schedule's getting difficult. City look good. Even Villa keep winning, having amassed 0.1 XG every game. It's difficult. It's tough, So this was a big win. And I think you could feel the relief in certain players. Declan Rice looked fuming. He looked so angry in the celebrations. I think, Clive, you mentioned that he walked straight off the pitch during the IR as well. He was not happy. Not in an aggressive way, more in a these are the standards kind of way. But yeah, maybe we just needed one of these days to remind people that this is where we are and what we want to achieve.
I think that's a salient point about Rice, and I did spot it in the stadium live. And my emotions weren't far off his. I was there in the Bournemouth games and all the other games when we scored late. And I had a real sense of joy. I didn't have that sense of joy this time. This isn't good enough. It really isn't. It's only one game, right? And we can fix it next game because it's only games of football. It's got about 50 to go, wherever it is. But it isn't good enough. I've not said that at any point this season. Even the Chelsea game when we were a little bit tentative, the Villa game, I thought we were unfortunate to lose it. And the last kick, Sunderland, we ripped them to pieces in the second half and maybe should have got a winner in the last second. I hadn't said this isn't good enough. This is the first time we've really regressed for me to a point where it's not good enough. We shouldn't be happy about it. We shouldn't be, I wasn't happy about it anyway. And so, yeah, I sort of got where Rice was. And there's been people talking about who should be our skipper or the rest of it. I've not been one of those people. But we need to lean into more of what he is bringing to the show. We do. Because he's bringing it, mate. He's bringing that leadership, that thing, that get over the line gene. He's bringing it. And the other guy we really miss who brings that is obviously Big Gabriel. Bukayo Saka brings it. We need more of these people to say, no, we're not accepting this. We're angry. Remember that anger we were talking about recently, about we playing with a sense of anger? We want to make sure we do it this time. Man, we can't be just jogging about up there. We can't be just jogging about, I love Eze. Can't be just jogging about, tapping it 5 yards to the left, to the right. Come on, take people on. Have an offensive anger to deliver. You can't just pop it here, pop it there. No, we've got to do it. We got to do it. We control our destiny here. If we're going to slip into those habits, we've got to do it. We've got to be more aggressive, offensive, much more running off the ball. It was too passive, too passy, too side to side. The horseshoe's back. No one running in behind apart from one person. This stuff is important. And I hope they're having a right rollicking this week after, and to get themselves back, because I can't take that again for another season. I just can't. They're too good not to have medals. That's the truth of it. They are too good not to have the medals. They need to get them this year. And this stuff's got to stop. It really has.
Right, let's take a quick break here because it's time to tell you about some brands. And I think Elliot would kill me if we go any longer. So here's Elliot with some ads and we'll see you in a second. Right, moving forward, at the end of the day, 3 points are 3 points, and you should be able to enjoy a last-minute winner, regardless of who it's against and what the circumstances are. There will be time to look ahead to the Everton game later this week, but let's zoom out a bit and go bigger picture to finish, and we'll talk about how we're feeling about the team after this difficult run of games. I mean, we stumbled away at Sunderland. We couldn't capitalise on the man advantage at Chelsea. We lost to Villa. We scraped through this one. But it's been a real mix and match period with a lack of stability and continuity in the team. And Tim, you mentioned it earlier. Elliot did make a good point on socials yesterday, although you should still block him. But in our last 5 games, we've used 5 different front threes, 3 different midfield threes, and 5 different back fours. So it's an entirely fair point to say we've built this squad to be able to cope with injuries and use different players to suit different systems and opposition. But sometimes there can be too much change. And I think what we've had to deal with recently has really destabilized us. It's forced us to improvise a bit and move away from our identity, which is stability. We've lacked balance, and eventually that catches up with you when you're playing good teams in England. It's perfectly fine to admit that and accept that. Our squad is looking much stronger, much healthier now, especially in attacking areas. And with Saliba back, who quietly came in and had a good game, I think we've got a major reference point back into the team. He helps us build play from the back. He offers us defensive strength in terms of where we stand, how we track runners, and also how teams play against us, which I think could prove really important in how we find ourselves again. Tim, what are you hoping to see from the team moving forward as we approach some tricky games over Christmas? Can it be something tactical, physical, psychological, all of the above?
Yeah, I think we've got to learn how to use this group of attackers, and because we've got so many options now, and that's always, and don't get me wrong, like it's correctly painted as a good thing. It is a good thing. That's why we did it in the first place. But there is some, I wouldn't go so far as to say pain, but there's evolution, right, in the attack. And again, I referenced that last block before the November international break. Who are we relying on? Saka, Trossard, Marino. Guys we know and that we've had. 2 of them for quite a while. And, we kind of fell back on guys that we knew. And then we were kind of just integrating Eze there. And that was up and down, to be fair. Gets like a hat-trick against Spurs, scores the win against Palace, great. But there have been other games that have been a bit bitty where he hasn't been involved enough. But with one player, you can kind of carry that. But now, Madueke's back in, and Gyokeres is back in, and now it feels like we're trying to integrate 3 players into the attack. And that's been, again, it's too much to say bumpy, because that sounds like an excuse and we want these options, but that does take a little bit of time. Some of those partnerships take a little bit of time as well. And it kind of feels like those injuries to those players in the autumn kind of delayed things a little bit. And now we're in that kind of period. Maybe even also slot at Liverpool, where it's like, okay, we've got Ekitike, we've got Isak, we've got Wirtz. How on earth do we get them all together in the same team? And maybe Liverpool are beginning to come out the other side of that a bit after some really significant pain, it must be said. And so I don't think it will be like that bad for us, but like there is an adaptation period to finding out how and when to use those players. I don't think we did it correctly against Villa. I don't think we really did it correctly here. Some of that, like I said, is governed a little bit by fitness issues. Trossard probably not fit to start at the moment, for example, and he's probably a bit of a pillar player we'd like to use a bit more, but fitness is kind of preventing us from doing that. So I think this week, having like a full week of training and not just recovery should help. I pretty much always back Arteta to iron out these wrinkles because they happen all the time in a season. And the reason we don't talk about them that much is generally because Arteta's good at adapting. And so we don't really notice. It's like, oh, we've had one game where maybe an opponent's worked us out a little bit. There we go. Problem's gone. Like I back Arteta to do that. You know, maybe our set piece, like we're overdue a goal from a corner. I mean, I guess the first goal against Wolves is from a corner. You know, can we get that kind of going back again? But yeah, I think a little bit more rhythm in that kind of in that attacking area, and just having a sense of which players suit which situations and getting more comfortable with that. I always think that that's going to take time, and if we're doing it top of the league, that's good. If we're learning from a 2-1 victory, that's good. That's better than what we were doing last week, learning from a 2-1 defeat. So, you know, I just think there's a little bit of stress to reduce there, and obviously we really need Gabriel back. I'd really like to. I think Gabriel and Saliba back together, I think really gives us our confidence and identity again, as it did in the last block when we were still working out some attacking issues, I think.
Clive, you spoke about preferring Arsenal to play in pairs and squares as opposed to triangles out wide. What does that mean exactly? And how would you structure or set up the team moving forward to get us back to our normal levels?
I just think it's a more supportive structure. So you get a 10 closer to a centre forward, and our centre forward's lacking a little bit of something. So he's got a body around him to combine with. That makes sense. I love a double pivot of Supermendy and Rice. I think within that structure, they're both free, but they're both responsible. So they can go there. I think the Timber-Saka partnership has been wonderful. You know, so, and obviously Trossard, who I wasn't picking to start the season, and, you know, Calafiori in particular on build-up has been brilliant. I think he's very wise when to arrive into space, and he's not just there too early. Sometimes in some spaces I'm not sure what he's actually doing there, but that's who he is. And I really liked it from a centre-back. We can all name them. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what it does for me is it shares responsibility, and it doesn't allow dominance in one particular part of the pitch. For me, that variation, diversity is really important. When we go to wide triangles, what tends to happen is I find Declan Rice on the left touchline too much for me, for my heart rate. Because if anything goes to go wrong, I want him there to be able to stop it. Just a little bit more inside. And I just think we end up with a situation now with our fullbacks a bit too high too early. And if things break down, we're running back down the middle of the pitch. And I understand it. We're trying to get there for the cross, have a bit more physicality in there. I get it. One of those fullbacks heads one in. I'll be the first one to stand up and clap. But I personally don't like that. I don't like it. I feel as though everyone's seen it. And so when we played Chelsea and we went to the wide threes, again, it's against 10 men. We controlled the second half. We got people high. Little rotation on the right-hand side. Third man runs in behind. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know, so I think what Tim said there about recognizing the opposition and the game and then picking the team accordingly, we have to do that. So when it's a transitional game, pick a transitional team, particularly away from home. When it's a high-tech game, pick a high-tech team, particularly when we're at home against the bottom half of the league. And we've got to make those decisions. And if we've got to drop people for it to make those decisions, that's what we do. But I do think there's another element to this. There is no way Arteta wasn't going to pick Gyokeres for a home game against Wolves. He's thinking, I need to ignite him. Yep. He needs to get a goal to get his confidence up. Even though he was the wrong pick tactically for this day, profile-wise, you can see why he picked him. Do you know what I mean? And I think there are other issues. Madueke's got an MCL, right? Odegaard's got a knee injury as well. Ben White, obviously, we now know what's happened. There are other people out there. Trossard's got, issues as well. There are other people, though they're there, we don't know by how much they're there. Do you see what they can produce? And condition is a key thing for me. It's the key thing to be in condition, to be ready. I think even Saliba I didn't expect him to do the full game. I'm not sure he would have done it. Went for the injury. I think he would have come off for Norgard if he had scored 2 goals early. I think he would have come on. These are the little details that happen. Steve has now done a full game, potentially got a calf problem that could lead to an Achilles problem. Who knows? These are the margins that we're working towards at the moment. Really, really fine. So back to the structure thing. I just prefer the structure where the span of control is shared a lot more and it's much more diverse across the pitch. But if number 7 keeps producing, none of us are going to care about wide triangles, are they? You know what I mean? If he keeps doing it, but I'm just a little bit concerned about that reliance on one person. And I would be for any reliance on one person. I'd be the same, exactly the same. We're a collective team. Look at our goal scorers, all 3 4s. No one's sticking out. I just want to see us make sure that we don't lose people like Eze. We don't want to lose them because the structure's changed and now we can't find a role for them. Because otherwise, the squad may as well be the same size as last season. And I think it's really important. We have roles for people, not just selections.
I think that reliance on a single player was a big issue for City earlier on this season as well. And you saw in a couple of their results where they ended up losing without Haaland. They didn't have much else, but now they've found Foden again. They've got Cherki playing, Doku scoring goals, even the centre-backs are scoring now as well. So that's what we need to get back to, a real share and a sort of equality when it comes to causing danger and scoring goals. I mean, I would just like to mention Trossard quickly because I posted something at halftime about us needing him to come off the bench and save the day again, because even though it was written slightly facetiously, it wasn't really written facetiously because he's often been someone who can change games for us in 30-minute, 20-minute cameos. He's always good for a goal, for an assist, and I think he's playing at a super high level at the moment. And I think in terms of us moving forward, we spoke about Saka being the constant on the right-hand side, but I think Trossard and Calafiori coming back into the team for Everton will be really, really important. I mean, where we were at the start of the year, there's Eze who could play on the left, there's Madueke who can play on the left. We need to get this right-sided bias away from Saka. How Trossard has been able to come in, cement himself as the best option. For me, he's the best option now on that left-hand side. A credit to him and sort of very professional. I think he's done a great thing this year for us. Tim, do you just want to finish on Trossard quickly?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because like in August, we're having these discussions like, is Trossard going to play? Is Merino going to play? And they're the first guys
about the contract as well.
Yeah, and they're the first guys we're sending for, and the guys we probably want to start in this game, but they've been overplayed a bit, so we don't. So we're essentially resting them, and Trossard's clearly carrying something as well. So it's funny how quickly it kind of goes from, and then like Eze's one of the big summer signings. I don't know, 3 touches in this game or something stupid. Forgot he was on the pitch again. Gyokeres, 2 touches. And we're relying on Saka again, and we're bringing on Trossard and Merino. So it does feel like, and that's not necessarily a criticism of those signings or those players. It's just they're not completely integrated. And that's what we're going through at the moment. We're just trying to integrate some new pieces, but maybe in a situation, with the exception of Gyokeres, really, who had to play a lot of games due to injuries, where we're trying to integrate them with cameos, and just because of the number of options we have, and that's obviously going to maybe slow things down a little bit. So what I'm looking for here is probably and we saw this, 2 seasons ago when we really, really challenged for the title, and we see this from Pep quite a lot, is the second half of the season course correction. The little wrinkles that, is that player integrated yet? Have we learned to do this yet? And then January comes and it's bang. Yep, all of that sorted, and we're going to win 25 games out of 17 or something. That's what I'm really looking for, and to do that from a real position of strength this time, to do that when we're in front in the table. And I know, and I understand it, there's also that sense of ennui when you read that City have won as well, or you watch City and it's like, oh God. But you look at the stats from that game and like, that isn't sustainable either, what they're doing. They're going to have to do something different. They've got issues to fix as well. If they keep having those stats in games, and they might not, Pep might sort it all out, but if they keep doing that, they will drop points as well. But that goes for us as well. If we play like this again, Wolves at home might be the only fixture in the league that performance gets 3 points from, and we only just got that. So, yeah.
There we go. I mean, that feels like a good place to finish. We're on a bit of a tight schedule, but I think we've done a good job of covering all the main talking points. I mean, actually, we've got this really weird thing now where I believe it's called, let me just check my notes, a week off before our next game, but I'm sure there will be some Patreon episodes during the week, and of course another main pod episode before we travel to Everton on Saturday. We'll have an instant reaction for you after the game as well, so if you're not already signed up to the Patreon, get on it. Christmas is around the corner, which means we'll be navigating a silly schedule soon, but you get like 25 pieces of content a month. It'll be more over this period as well, all for the price of a coffee. So go on, give it a go. I'm sure you'll be happy with your decision. Otherwise, all that's left for me to do is thank my guests. Tim, always a pleasure chatting.
My pleasure as always.
Clive, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
And my name is Phil Costa. Thanks for putting up with me for this episode. Take a breath, take stock, and let's use this week to rest and recover ahead of what will be a challenging period. But we're still top of the Premier League, we're top of the Champions League, and things could definitely be worse. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Everton 0.